Okay, first step was we're going to get the chassis together. As you can see here, the front and rear body mounts have been installed and the clip for the battery. And I've also glued on, just stuck on the Velcro for the ESC and the receiver. Okay, so that's all together as it needs to be there. So the next step is attaching the upper links, and you'll notice here we've got two different lengths. The 37mm ones are for the front, the 32mm ones are for the rear. How do you tell what's front and rear? Okay, so on these side plates, these are not equal or symmetrical. The back is slightly lower than the front. So what you're going to need to do is look at these carefully. Let's get this focus a bit better. Now it's kind of hard to tell, but you can probably notice once you get this bottom flat, you'll notice this is a little bit lower than this one. So that's the back. I'm going to mark on these what's back and what's front, so you don't need to sort of try and figure it out, but this is the prototype version, so I'll just explain that for you. So what we're going to do is put the upper links into these holes here. So this is the back, so the back's going to have the shorter ones. So, and for this one we're going to flip it around the opposite way. So that's the shorter side, which is the back. Okay, so that means that one's going to go there, this one's going to go here, and that one's going to go there. Okay, so now we have these installed. So we've got the shorter ones at the back, which are the shorter post here, and vice versa. We want them opposite because they're opposite sides. What we can do is we can put this chassis aside for the moment. Now what we need to do is attach these plates to the sides of this. Now remembering that this is pointing to the rear of the vehicle, so the shorter side, the shorter links should be on this side, the longer links on this side obviously. But before we do this, what we're going to do is install the drive shafts onto these here, because it's much easier to do with nothing in the way. Just a quick thing before I go ahead here. Now in the description I've got 60mm drive shafts, which you should be able to find on AX24 or something like that, Amazon, whatever you prefer. Now what I've done for the rear shaft is I've just cut maybe 3mm off the length of it. When it's fully squat, it was sort of binding up too much on the shaft, so I just cut a little bit off the end just to give it a bit more clearance. You can leave the front one as is. Now what you can see there is that was where the motor was rubbing, or has been rubbing on the shaft. That's why we've got the shorter links in the rear to that basically brings the angle of the drive shaft down a little bit, so it clears the motor. Okay, now we've got the drive shafts installed. What we're going to do is put these side plates on, remembering we've got to put short link to the back, and we're going to put the sliders on as well, so the sliders will sit on the outside and screw through these plates and then into the base plate. Okay, so let's do that. Alright, now you should have something that looks a little bit like this. And just double checking again, you've got the long links at the front and the short links at the back. That's pretty important. Back being where the motor is. Okay, and it should look a little something like this. Alright, so the next step is we will put the lower links into the base plate, which are these little slots in here. Okay, so let's do that now. Okay, so we should have something that looks a little like this. Now what you'll notice is on these high clearance links, you want the shorter leg or shorter part of it towards the axles. So it'll sort of sit something like that. Okay, that's the only thing to keep in mind. They're all the same, so just make sure you orient them that way. Okay, so the next step will probably be now is to connect up the axles. But the first step would be is to build the axles, which I'll put up another video about actually building axles, but we want to get it from a built axle with a drive shaft attached to a built axle with the servo attached. So we're going to need to put the servo mount on first. So let's do that. So for the servo mount, you're going to need 10mm screws. So let's just get this focus a bit better. So your 10mm screws are going to go in here, which they go through these holes here. Let's put it all upright so it makes sense. So they're going to go in there, and then you've got your two smaller screws to hold the servo in, which are 5mm screws. Okay, so let's just do that now. Just a quick tip here, it's easier to screw this in first, so it's going to be the steering link behind the servo horn, and we're going to use that metal hole. So put that in first before you then screw it into this mount. Okay, and then we've got a fitted up axle like so. So now we're going to attach these to the chassis. Front and rear doesn't really matter because they're both the same, and the shaft is the same length. It's like I said previously, I've only shortened the female end of the shaft a little bit on the rear drive shaft. So let's put these together now. So the first thing we're going to attach will be the upper links. Okay, and they're going to go onto these little ears here on the servo mount. So we'll put those in and get that all mounted up, because then to do the lower links, we're going to have the shocks and everything together with that. So we'll put the shocks and everything all together in one go. So we'll do these upper links first. Something to also keep in mind before you try to get these links in is we've got to get this drive shaft connected. Because once those links are in, you're not going to get it to go in properly. Okay, so just remember that before you put them in. Alright, now we should be looking like this. We're starting to get very close to a finished little buggy. Okay, so now what we're going to do is install these shocks, these modified shocks, as I've described in the description. These are modified from, these are the original shocks, the AX24 shocks, but they've been modified. So basically remove the stock springs. You need to get a 20mm long by 3mm diameter spring. You can try different wire thicknesses, but as long as it's going to keep the it's got enough tension on it to keep the shock closed, that's all you really need. We're not using the springs for any kind of suspension. It's totally unnecessary for a rock crawler. What we want in this scenario is super low center of gravity. So by setting them up like this, it's going to pull the shocks down. It'll give you the travel you need when you need it, but the majority of the time you're going to be at rock bottom as far as the suspension is concerned, making you much more stable. So what we need to do now is we're going to insert the chassis, because the shock's screwing to the top through these side plates, and then at the axles we're going to go through the shock, and then the link's going to go into here. So all with one screw, one 14mm screw. Okay, so let's get that all done now, and then we'll be pretty much close to finish putting it all together. Okay, so now we've got the links in at the bottom, as you can probably see there. It goes through the shock on the outside of the mounts, and then goes through the link and screws in the opposite side there. Okay, right, so now all the links are connected. We now need to get the top part of the chassis installed with the shocks, and then we'll be able to mount the ESC and the receiver. Alright, so now the upper shock mounts have been screwed in. As you can see, everything's all together. Alright, and now we can mount the receiver, which no screws required, but you've just got to stick the Velcro that you'll get in the kit like something like similar, so that it matches up. The receiver needs to go in this way, so the pins are on the same side as the battery clip, and this Velcro is quite good. It just will sit down like so, and then the ESC is going to mount like that. Very simple, very good. So then now we've just got to wire everything up. So that means on the rear steer is going to be channel 1, the ESC is going to be channel 3, and the front steer is going to be channel 4 on the receiver. Okay, so we're all wired up. We've got the rear steer going to channel 1, the ESC on channel 3, and the front steer coming through this way into channel 4. Then plug the motor into the ESC. You may need to lift this off to do that, but once it's plugged in, it'll clear the receiver okay. And then this is your battery connection. So then what we're going to do is slide the battery in from this side into the battery compartment here. So let's just do that. So this is just the same size standard battery as the AX24. So we'll slot that into, slot that into this cavity here. So we'll just feed these wires through, and then make sure we get the charging one through the opposite side, and then it's a snug fit, so we'll just slide that through, and that will pretty much hold it in there, no problem. What I usually do to keep this out of the way is we'll just tuck that into this little hole in here, like that, and then connect your battery up. Now here we've got a little clip, little cable management clip here, so you can slide all the cables into that, and it keeps it all neat and tidy. Right, so now this should power on and we should be good to go. There we go. So I've got the controller powered on at the moment, but we've got power. and everything connected up correctly as you see here, we should be all good to go. Now we just got to set the body up. So let's just have a quick look at the body here, right? So it obviously comes in two pieces. We've got the tray cage and the body itself. Now you can paint it whatever way you want. I've just used spray cans from your local hardware store. I basically covered this over, I sprayed this black first, just rough, didn't care about getting it over here. Then once that was dry, I taped up the sort of headlights, kept them all clear, and then just sprayed the rest of the body like an olive green colour. Now the tray cage is bolted on with 5mm screws, there's two either side. And the other thing is you'll get some strips of metal in the kit as well, and they've just got a slide that slides into the back there and glue them in. And that one just glues into this part here. These little ridges here are just sort of to guide it over the front magnet mount to keep it centered. That one there. So the magnets will stick to that, and that keeps it from sort of sliding left to right, but it doesn't really slide much at all. And same with the back here. There's a little bit sticking out there that goes in. There's like a little cavity for that to sit in there. So then basically it will just sit over like so and lock into place. And there you have it. All built.